2. Check, check, check. All right. So clip this like into your pocket, and the mic goes up here. Other way. Yeah. And this kind of goes up here. You can clip it like right to the top there if you want, or you can.
Micing up. Hello? Does that work? Yeah? Okay.
Maybe just a tiny bit louder. Go ahead and talk again.
Hello. Wow. Okay.
Okay, we can hear you.
Fun.
All right, let us know when we're live streaming here. We're good to go?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, can you guys see me? Right here? Okay. All right, so welcome everybody to our live. Welcome everybody to our live event featuring Dave School graduate from 2016, Tiffany Nicole Bromley. She's going to be talking to you about her experience here at Dave School, her experience after Dave School. She's going to give you some advice. We're going to watch her portfolio. You're not going to get out of that. We're going to maybe take a look at her IMDb credits, and she's going to give you guys some really helpful advice to start your career off. But you're not here to listen to me talk. You're here to listen to Tiffany. So please, Tiffany, let's give Tiffany a big warm welcome, guys. So Tiffany, if you would, the podium is yours. We have cameras focused in different areas.
All right. That wasn't me. Okay. Hi, guys. So, like you said, I graduated in 2016, and this was probably one of the hardest things I ever put myself through intentionally, but it was one of the funnest, too, because being around a bunch of people that had a common goal and common interests was really awesome, so cherish that. About a month before I graduated, I was going through the final block as a compositor. I had decided that that was what I was going to do. So, sorry, the echo's getting me a little bit. Yeah, I decided that I wanted to do compositing. I felt like that was kind of the best route for me. So I started applying for jobs about a month before graduation. I'm a very tenacious person. I wanted to get it done. I wanted to make sure that I was going to, be starting something new as soon as this was done. When I started applying, I applied to 22 different places. A friend of mine and I had started compiling a list of studios. I highly recommend you do that as well, just kind of familiarizing yourself with what's out there. I applied to places in Atlanta. I applied to a couple in Chicago, a few in New York, and a bunch in California. About 2 weeks after I started applying, I got one email back, and they were pretty much offering me a job in LA, and I was supposed to start 2 weeks before graduation. That was a huge step for me. I had been to LA once before, but I talked with the teachers and stuff here, and they were extremely encouraging. I was actually going to be leaving to go and start that job 2 weeks prior to graduation, and thankfully I was able to work with Dave School and everything, and they allowed me to go and still graduate. I highly recommend that if you get an opportunity, that you take it. Extremely difficult, and I had to find my own place to live. I actually ended up getting an Airbnb that was a boarding house. It was a bunch of different people staying in one house. Everyone had locks on their doors, and we shared a bathroom and a kitchen. But you do what you gotta do if you really wanna make this work. And so I flew out there and I started a job. The job was only for a 2-week contract. I didn't know what was gonna happen after that. I actually had a boyfriend and he stayed here, and that was totally fine. I went out there, I started working, and the 2-week contract ended up turning into a 3-month contract. And so at that point, I was pretty settled into doing that. I Also, one thing I want to recommend is when you are starting a job, talk with your teachers and stuff to figure out how much, because the studio asked, how much do you want to get paid? It's a very difficult thing when you're first starting out, and so asking the teachers around me, they gave me suggestions. This is how much I made at my first job. This is how much I made at my first job. And always ask for a little bit more, because you never know. I asked for $5 more than the consensus, and I was given that. So I went out there, I started doing that. Contracts are gonna end, and it's gonna be really scary. But I let it happen. You can take out unemployment, which is a great source for you. Always make sure that you do that in between jobs. When I finished my contract at that job, I then applied for 33 different places. And when I'm talking applying, I'm talking you go online, you go to the website you're interested in, you find the email, if you can find an email, you save it, and you email them your resume, your demo reel. I emailed them my demo reel of everything that I had worked on at the school, mostly compositing work, of course, because that's what I was going for. I had done a couple projects on the side. I do suggest that as well. I would definitely suggest, especially starting out, if you want to be a compositor, working on paint out. 2D paint out is very important to work on, to learn, along with 2D tracking. I highly, highly suggest it. You can find any piece of footage and remove something in it, you know, put a couple of transitions in there from what it used to look like and what it looks like now, and put that on your demo reel. You're going to be doing a lot of that at the beginning, a lot of that and a lot of roto, and I highly suggest that you make that apparent, that that is something you can do. It's a very technical thing, and not everybody can do it, because some studios will have a roto paint department and a compositing department, and a lot of the compositors that got hired on as compositors, they don't have a lot of experience doing that. It's a very good skill to have. Yeah?
I just want to confirm, I didn't tell you to say that, right?
No, you did not tell me to say that, no. No, yeah, I've been in the industry for about 5.5 years now, and I still have a bunch of paint work on my demo reel, because I do think it's extreme. It's not like exciting, and it's not, you know, like making things explode or anything like that, but it's basic knowledge that is very good to know.
I think this would be a good point to maybe showcase the demo reel.
Yeah, we can do that.
Can you go ahead and let that roll, Jose? Can you turn off that little light right there?
No, yeah. I actually prefer to not have audio, because you never know who's going to actually press play and their audio is going to be really loud, and then they're going to have a song blaring in their face. So I prefer to not have any song or anything like that on mine. It's all just basic work. And one thing I do want to stress is that when you leave a project behind, make sure to ask for your work, because you're not always going to get it. There are plenty of reasons why they won't give it to you. This is a fun one. Yeah. There are plenty of reasons why they're not going to give you your work. I worked on King Richard for Warner Brothers, and they said that they didn't want to give me any work that had any principal characters in it. All of my shots had characters in them. I've worked on shots that do beauty work, which you will know and love afterward when you're in the industry. That's a lot of eye bag paint out, wrinkles, zits, stuff like that. They don't want that on your demo reel, because obviously I'm sure the actors have stuff saying that they don't want that on your demo reel. I like to keep my stuff up to date because I like to bounce around from studio to studio. There's some people that don't, and that's going to be a preference for you, and I'll definitely get into that as well. But just make sure you ask for your work, because sometimes they don't give it to you until after the movie or the show has come out, which can be months. So it's good to just have it and have it in the works. Yes.
Can we just real quick go through the reel and you talk briefly about what
Yeah.
you've done, or maybe a couple of shots?
So this was the CG integration. Yeah, for both of those have been CG integration. The watermelon, the shoe, and everything that was thrown at him, that wasn't in there, so we had to add that in. This next one is a face replacement. Of course, there's not an old lady doing that, so I had to add the face on there. Muzzle flashes, blood spatter, debris, that's something that you will do a lot in the industry. Yeah, they don't usually, guns actually don't flash whenever you shoot them, but it helps to have that in there. So this was just a random broken camera effect. I was working for Framestore on this one, and this is on the show Why Women Kill, and they said we need it to look like the camera's broken, just make it look cool. That was the only note. So this was actually the scene that they put in after Stanley had died. This was not originally in the film, and she was on a blue screen on that, so I had to completely do the green screen on her. This is a building extension. That is also something you will do a lot if you work on Marvel films. They add in a lot of camera movement that wasn't originally in there. And so when you do that, they extend the camera, and you're not going to get any of this that actually all the top of those buildings weren't originally part of the footage. This is wire removal. That will be a lot of what you do in the beginning, especially if you get the knowledge of like rotopaint and stuff. Rig removals are a big thing. That was on Black Panther. And I did rig removal on Spider-Man. This is the first one. He's pulling it from the door. There was rig on the ground and on the door. Rig removal. That was suit cleanup. That's another fun one if you work on Marvel. The suits don't look like that at all. You have to paint out all the seams, all the weird stuff that happens to them whenever they're on set. And one nice thing about certain studios you work at is they will let you, like when you're here, you can get all of the plates and everything to kind of take it through all the transitions. You're not going to be able to do that every time. They don't want you to show that. But I worked at a studio that worked on a lot of TV, which was actually my first job. This was from Ingenuity Studios. And they allowed me my last week to save all of my plates so I can show the transitions of everything that I did. So that's nice. If you can do it, I definitely would suggest it. But I keep all of that at the end of the reel for that reason. This is a sign replacement, and then they wanted me to remove the original sign of the rat down there and then move it over. So learning stuff like adding in reflections on signs and color, learning how to match color and stuff like that, all very important. So just things to think about. That's definitely just learning how to train your eye to what looks good. Takes a second, and then the paint's all the technical, the tracking, the rotoing, the people, just practice that as much as you can because you're going to be doing a lot of it. Sign replacements, screen replacements, also a big thing. Anytime you see a phone on TV, a computer screen, a television, all of that, it's never going to be actual footage. So learning how to match the color on the TV to what's around it. Also, I've worked on plenty of things where I've had to make the TV look like it was from the 90s or the 70s. So learning how to get reference to make it look right. And then, you know, CG puke might also be in your future as well. So, yeah, there's that. So you want to have any, we save questions till the end. So yes, after I was at Ingenuity, after my 3-month contract ended, I applied for 33 different places and I got 4 callbacks. And I took a job and I took a pay cut. That might happen. You know, if you need a job, you need a job. And I worked that job for 2 months, and then I got a call from Luma, and they were offering me a rotopaint position, which was still, it was actually a pay raise from what I took, from the pay cut that I took. So I was like, okay, but I wasn't sure about taking a step down from being a compositor to just doing rotopaint. But it was the best decision I ever made, because like I said, I consider that a skill. I can get that done extremely fast, and so a lot of those things are given to me. I think it's important. So if you have the chance to do that, I definitely suggest it. I worked at Luma for 2 years after that, and I moved up to being a compositor the last 6 months I worked there. The first studio I worked at, I worked on a lot of TV, which I actually prefer. That's another thing that you're going to find out. You're going to find out what it is you like working on, and the longer that you're in the industry, the more chance you're going to have to choose the type of stuff you want to work on. You know, at that first studio, it's like working on TV, it's in and out. You get a shot, you work on it for a few days, a week maybe at the most, and then you're seeing it on TV a couple weeks later. That's my preferred thing. When I worked at Luma, I worked on a bunch of Marvel stuff and a few Disney things, and you're staring at the same shots 3, 4, 6 months. That's not for me, but I know people that love doing that. You know, it's just going to be what it is you want. You know, you're definitely going to get more high-end things on your demo reel working at Marvel. You're going to get a lot of CG stuff on your demo reel, and that's going to, you know, help you a lot in the future. So it really all depends. But yeah, so you know, one reason I like moving from studio to studio is I like working on a bunch of different stuff. I feel like I learn a lot doing that. I work with a lot of different people doing that. There's, as you guys know, there's a million different ways to do things, and everyone does them differently. Everyone's going to have a different way of doing something, so you're going to learn a lot by bouncing around. But again, some people like staying at the same studio, and that's also extremely valid. But yeah, after Luma, that was difficult. My contract ended. They decided not to extend it, and I felt like I was ready to move on, but I would have never made that decision on my own. But it was probably the best thing that happened, because after that I went to Framestore and I worked on another television show, which I said I loved. But you know, you're going to meet a lot of people, and it's extremely important to keep good relationships. And the supervisor I worked with on the show Why Women Kill, after I left there, after that contract ended, I moved somewhere else, and then he had called me saying, hey, we're working on something new, you should come over. And that's when I went back to work on Hubie Halloween, the puke shot. And I got there and he was leaving as soon as I got back there, and I actually went back there to work with him. But he was getting a VFX supervisor job at Warner Brothers. And that's, I don't know, in my opinion, that's the job that you want. You want a VFX supervisor position at a studio. That's when you get to go on set, you know, you get to meet people, you know, it's really exciting. But that actually led to me being able to work at Warner Brothers with him later on. And you never know what's going to come of that. And that's probably been my favorite job so far. So you don't really know. Yeah.
One of the things that we tell the students quite a bit is the power of the network.
Yeah.
So how important it is when you're here at the school, and how important and more important it is once you're in the industry.
Yeah.
You've already kind of alluded to that with this one producer or visual effects supervisor, rather, you were kind of going from studio to studio with.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you've used your network for other opportunities and for jobs, and how important it's been for you?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, when I first started, I was applying to 33 places. When I started at Framestore, I probably had sent my information to like 3 or 4 places, and I ended up getting the job at Framestore soon after that. I actually, because I've met all of the people I have, because I keep my stuff up to date, I can now email any of those people I've worked for before whenever I need a job, and normally there's usually something available. It's actually gotten to the point now where I don't really apply for jobs. People usually contact me asking if I'm available, when I'm available, telling me when they're going to be available, and most of the time it is people I've worked with before, people who know me. Yeah, it's extremely important, because if you're looking for something, you can email any number of people, supervisors you've worked with, friends, hey, do you know of anything? And usually someone knows of something, especially right now. This is probably a really good time for you guys to be starting, because they're hiring everywhere now. One thing I want to stress, and this is not on the topic of networking, but while I'm there, one thing I want to stress is that don't only apply to a job because they're offering a junior position. Yes, apply to any job that is offering a junior position, but not a lot of studios advertise junior positions, and that's because there's a lot of us starting out and not as many mid-level and senior compositors in the business. So they're normally putting up those jobs. If they put up a junior job, they would get thousands of people. Just apply. Just send your stuff. Just say, hey, I'm starting out, or hey, I'm looking for something and really eager to work. And people will email you back, you know. I mean, you have to be tenacious, and, you know, quantity matters and things like that, but just send it out there. It never hurts to send an email, even if they're not hiring. You know, at least they have your information after that, you know.
It's kind of been my experience that when a studio is offering even a mid-level, whether it's animator, modeler, compositor position, whatever, they'll say, yes, this position is mid-level, but we know there's going to be a lot of junior-level people applying, and so we might have junior-level positions as well. But like she says, we don't post those because we're going to get 1,000 applications, and most of them are just garbage.
Yeah.
So yes, apply, even if it doesn't say junior, apply. Unless it says like 8 years of experience, that's probably not you. But 3 years, I would definitely apply. Art trumps all, so apply.
Yeah. I mean, you really never know, because like if you're applying, I mean, certain places do have like specific, this is what we're hiring for. The bigger places definitely. I've worked for Method, they do that. Framestore, they do that. Places like Luma has, you know, specific positions to apply for. But I applied for small studios that no one had ever heard of. I applied at big studios that everyone had heard of. It's important to just put it all out there, because a lot of the small studios, you go onto the website, all they have is an email address. Hey, career opportunities, contact us here. They're not going to have a job. Just send it to them, you know. Very, very important. Yeah.
Let's open it up for some questions from the audience.
Yeah. Yeah? I mean, I was literally working on it throughout the last month of class. I had done 2 side projects on my own. I did a paint out. This is actually kind of funny. Someone had told me that Mission Impossible 4 had been filmed, the stunt that Tom Cruise had done on the side of the plane where he's like hanging from the side of the plane. He did that, and they were like, yeah, it's filmed, you can like watch the stunt with the wire in there. And I was like, interesting. I went in and I got the footage and I painted it out. And I put that on my demo reel. I never said I worked on it, I painted it out. I did that, and I had another CG project on there that I did on my own, and I mean, that was really it. And then I had my stuff from all my compositing projects that I did in Block 3, I put on there, and I put on a shot that I worked on in Block 4. And that was it. Now, on my resume, I might have put that I worked at previous jobs that have nothing to do with this, but I put that I worked on our Block 4 project, and that was it.
What was your Block 4 project?
We worked on a shot-for-shot recreation of the 1980s Ninja Turtle cartoon commercial intro, which, that was so much fun. So we did like a live action CG mashup of it. It was like, I'm a huge 1990s Ninja Turtle movie fan. It's like my favorite movie now is 3. So very, very exciting, yeah. And so that was it. You just gotta like go at it with confidence and with the simple fact of, I'm starting out and I'm looking for an opportunity. So yeah, I would suggest just doing a couple things on your own. Like I said, finding any footage you can and doing some paint out on it. Working on tracking, roto, things like that. Yeah. He's like, no, please, please no.
When you're doing the interview,
yeah,
like, is there a common thread for questions they ask you, or?
So, I've had only a couple interviews because when I got that job at Ingenuity, they never interviewed me. The first job I ever got, they never interviewed me. I sent my stuff and they were like, okay, great, can you start in 2 weeks? And I was like, sure, yeah, I can do that. Now, when I worked at the next job, I did have a pretty extensive interview. It's really gonna depend on who you get. He looked through my resume and was asking specifics about the shots I had worked on. They'll sometimes say, we work on this, is this something that you can do? Most of the time we all suggest, yeah, I can do that. Make sure that you go in having at least a little bit of knowledge about it, that you feel at least semi-comfortable with it. But if you don't, you can always say, I am a quick learner, and I will make sure that I can do that for you. That's usually a pretty common one. They just really want to make sure that you can do the work that they're asking you to do. And if you're new, a lot of times they're not going to give you like really hard stuff to work on. So you can always ask the person sitting next to you. Yeah.
So I wanted to, okay. So my question that I have for you, in between your work times, do you do like any freelance or do any practices with extra work, like your own creations?
I don't. I take the time off, but that is not to say that I'm normal. I know a lot of people that go home every day after work and they work on their own stuff, or they do tutorials, or they're always learning something new. That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that everyone's going to be a little different in this. But yeah, I mean, there's really great tutorials online where you can kind of go with them. If you're at work and, there's something that you're unsure of, yeah, learning that in between gigs and stuff is always a great thing. Freelance, it's easier if you know somebody that already does it, because you got to find the work. I mean, I'm sure you could go on like one of those like people per hour things, but you got to be able to show something for something like that. So yeah, that's another thing about networking. I have my Rotopaint lead at Luma, he quit because he had a kid and decided to do all freelance work, and now I could go work with him doing freelance if I wanted to on my time off. So you just never know who you're gonna meet. So, yeah.
On just starting now, when you're trying to do your demo reel,
Yeah.
I realize that you want to do a generalized, but your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
But what about like other art, like let's say a painting or anything along those lines that can highlight your abilities as an artist, period?
Like marking it specifically?
Trying to get into the, if you're just starting out
Yeah.
and you don't have a lot of material of the actual stuff that we're doing here,
Yeah.
would it be an acceptable practice to put in something like a painting or something like your pencil drawings or something like that, charcoal?
Well, I also have my own website, which we set up here at the school. I'm not sure if we still do that, but I have my own website, and I have other things, or my website does point to other things that I do. It's not in my demo reel. I am very specific about what I put on my compositing demo reel, but I still have my modeling reel, I still have my animation reel from school. You can get to it. It's not readily available, but it was for a long time because I did want to be able to show them this is also what I can do. And when you're starting out, you never know. You may end up meeting a modeler at the first place you work, and you may, talk with them and think that you like that more, So continuing to do that stuff and show that stuff, yeah. I mean, I did photography too before I got into visual effects, and I had my website pointing to that as well. I think that they're all, anything that is art related, I think is going to help you. It's good to be a well-rounded artist in general, but not on your specific demo reel that's going to get you work.
So as a follow-up, then it would not be a faux pas to be in the interview and say, well, this is my demo reel for composite, but if you go to my website and give them the address that they can look at it and yeah,
I mean, if they
the other aspects.
Yeah, if they specifically, if they ask or you guys start talking about why you think you're good for this industry, why you think you're good for this particular position, yeah, when I was doing a lot of submitting, I would make a cover letter, and early on in the cover letter, you kind of have to say, well, why you think that you'd be good for the position. And I did put, I've done photography, I've done these other things. I do feel like that helps. So, yeah.
So we have a question from online. It is, how important is it that you live in the same location as the jobs you're applying to, and is there very much remote visual effects work available?
Okay. So everything is totally different now because of the pandemic. I suggest that if you're going to get a job in LA, that you move to LA, because we don't know when things are going to change. There are places that are hiring remote. I've seen jobs hiring all over the United States saying, we can do remote work. You could do that, but when you're first starting out, I really feel like being there and immersing yourself in that, because if the more you put it off, the harder it's going to be to make that jump. So yeah, I suggest that. And there's still a lot of studios that want you there, because if they need to bring anybody in, if something happens, if the system goes down, which happens, if your internet's not working, they could be like, oh, well, if you're vaccinated, come on in, So I definitely suggest it. And plus, it's kind of fun I chose LA because that was the first job I got, but there are so many studios in LA that it makes it bouncing around so much easier. What was the second question?
Is there, well, to answer it, if there's very much remote, is visual effects work available?
Yeah, right now there is. I was talking to Mike about this before. Zoic Studios has said that they are going to do remote indefinitely. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to be on remote all the time, but that they're like, we're going to give people the option, because at first they were scared, like Mike said. They didn't know how to do this. They didn't know how to have remote work, but people are a lot more willing to work a bunch of overtime if you're at home. And so I think that they're noticing that that's really making a difference in people's work. There's downtime too, and so being at home sometimes is a lot easier with the downtime than being at work. Yeah.
I'd like to expand upon your answer about working in the studio versus working remotely.
Yeah.
The networking.
Yeah.
If you're working at home, the chance of you networking with your coworkers is pretty low. You're not going to really kind of get to know them, and vice versa. They're not going to really get to know you. So I think there's definitely an advantage to working on site. I personally prefer that, but don't ever forget networking is a part of this industry. So
Yeah.
If you're looking for just remote opportunities, you might want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, if you have the option at the beginning to work in the studio, I highly suggest it. I don't know how it would have worked out had I not been there, because you're going to be learning new stuff all the time. Every single day you're going to be learning how to do something new. Even if you learned it here, someone else is going to have some other way of doing it. And so it's good to have people next to you to be able to ask after you've exhausted a little bit of time trying to do it on your own. I wouldn't say spending a bunch of time. I know that they've probably talked to you about that a little bit, maybe, but spending about an hour on something that you're not sure how to do, I think is a pretty decent amount of time before you're like, hey, can you help me? Because, people have like a wealth of knowledge right next to you. So I think working in the studio is invaluable. Plus, I've done remote for 2 years now, and I've worked with people I've never met. Having to discuss things with them is kind of difficult sometimes. So.
Hi. So what's the most difficult shot you've worked on thus far that you can talk about?
Oh boy. Well, I don't know about face replacements. This is just in general, those are really, really difficult. If you want a lot of experience working on it, you could try Lola. Lola is a great place for a lot of de-aging. All of the de-aging you see, all the face replacements, I just worked on King Richard, and obviously the little girls that were playing, they are not tennis players, so they put their faces on all of them. Obviously the old lady was not, doing flips and stuff like that. Those are all extremely hard because it is facial tracking, it's a lot of stuff. But you're gonna get like weird things too. Probably the hardest show in general I've worked on is I worked on the new Mary Poppins, and it's gonna end up being weird stuff. Like they filmed it and then they didn't like how the background looked, or there was too much stuff in the background, let's remove it, and everyone's like dancing in front of it doing this, and people's clothes are all going crazy, and it's gonna be things where you're like, okay, fun, but yeah. So just be prepared. But face replacements, those are pretty difficult.
Sorry, just one more.
Yeah.
You were talking about how LA is basically a mecca for your location, so you can go hop in from studio to studio.
Yeah.
Is Atlanta growing, or is it becoming that similar in that size and scope?
Not similar in size, but it is definitely growing. I know my old compositing teacher works in Atlanta, I believe, still. There are studios there for sure, and I did apply for jobs there. Had a turn of fate happened, I could have ended up there. I definitely suggest it. I would say studio-wise, the amount, LA, and then if we're just talking US, then probably New York. But you guys gotta think, with the exception of Montreal, LA is the cheapest out of all of the VFX hubs. Okay, again, like Atlanta, and there are, I think, a couple in Chicago, and I would definitely try it if you're not wanting to go too far away and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to bounce around from place to place, I definitely suggest one of those, and LA just happens to be the cheapest. So.
What's a skill that you had wished you invested in while you were here, once you got into the industry, that you definitely could have?
Paint out. Seriously, paint out. Because it's so it's technical, and it's one of those things that, like, when you look at it, if it's wrong, you can tell it's wrong. You can I mean, and there's so many different things that you're going to be painting out. I mean, I get some of the weirdest things. I've had to paint out spit. You got to paint out, you know, camera crews and cars that drive by. So all the reflections and everything that are coming on there, and windows, you know, lights and glasses. I've had to paint out things like boob jiggle, you know. I mean, all sorts of different things it's all, you know. It's weird. Yeah, there you go. Do it. So it was almost like I did it, and I had even done some of it on the side, but when I started my first job and they hand you that first shot, I mean, I'm 5 years in, and every single time I get a new shot, I'm like, okay, what's this gonna be, you know? And it was especially that, like, even getting my first paint out shot. So yeah, just really getting really good at 2D tracking. You're gonna have to track shots that don't have anything to track. You just got to figure it out. You know, they're not gonna feel bad for you that there's nothing in it to track. You just got to figure it out. And so it's a lot of hand things, you know, hand tracking, taking the tracker and moving it each frame. It's a lot of even taking just a transform and animating it, learning roto really well and things like that. Because whereas doing CG work is very hard, it's all about what it looks like to the eye and what it looks like to the studio. Okay, you could do something that looks amazing, and then you hand it over, and Marvel can be very particular about the things that they want. So it could completely change, but you're not going to be doing as much CG for at least a few years. A little bit, but not as much. So I would definitely, because you're going to do things like split screens. So say you've got two actors sitting on a couch together, and one actor does really good on one take and another actor does really good on the other take. They want to put those two together. That happens a lot. So getting really good at tracking and rotoing and stuff like that, I think, is just so important when you first start out. And green screen, you know, but still I think that paint and everything should come first. It's really good to know.
So as an artist going into the industry, can you talk about what it's like working on contract sort of jobs versus if you've had any like staff jobs, and what the difference is and the advantages or disadvantages of either?
Yeah, I've never taken a staff position. I've been offered one, but decided not to take it because I like to bounce around. The problem with that is you don't get offered health insurance. You don't get offered vacation time, you know, anything like that. So that's kind of a downside for sure, especially, you know, if you're like, I'm married so I can have my husband's insurance, that's great, but that's not for everybody. So that would definitely, like I said, I prefer to jump around contract to contract, project to project, because I like working on so many different things, because I like meeting different people, and because everybody's got a wealth of knowledge at their fingertips. But I have friends who have been at Luma. That's the longest job I've had. I worked there for 2 years. I've had friends that have been there for 10, 15 years, and they love it. They love having that stability. It's important. And if you're gonna get offered that, if that is what you want, then take it. I do know that if you do take a staff job, now I don't know this for everybody, this is only for one particular studio, I'm not even gonna name the studio, so just keep this in mind, that if you take a staff job at a place and then you decide to leave, the chances of them asking you to come back are not that high because you left. But job security is great, you know? It's just, my thing in particular is that if contract ends, sometimes I can take some time off, you know, kind of slowly start putting out feelers, regroup. It can be really long hours. If that's what you're into, that's good. I know people that have no problem doing that, love what they do, and it's not that I don't, but I don't like working a lot of hours. So it's like in the beginning you're going to be doing a lot of that. You know, you want to do whatever they ask you to do, pretty much. As time goes on, you're going to have a little more of an option. You're going to have a little more of a stance to be like, oh, okay, not tonight, but maybe tomorrow. But I wouldn't suggest that. So. But yeah, so those are a couple of different things with that.
Any other questions?
With all the projects that you've worked on so far, what is the most time you spent on one project?
Any of the Marvel projects, Marvel, they start sending things as soon as they shoot it, and throughout the process they'll be doing reshoots, they'll be doing recuts, so things will change, and so it takes a really, really long time. You know, as they're putting into editing, sometimes they're like, oh, I don't really like that, and so it comes back. Like any of the Spider-Mans, I worked on the first 2 Spider-Mans. It was a really long process. So it's, yeah, you're probably looking at 5-6 months in whole for something like that, maybe even longer. But yeah, probably those.
From Dave school to now, what makes you better as a compositor?
Sorry.
Like, from Dave school to now, like, what makes you better as a compositor?
Just being open to learning new things, you know, making sure that you're grasping what it is they're telling you, because, you know, Nuke changes all the time, and it's really good to have a knowledge of what the nodes are actually doing, as opposed to just being like, I know that if I put a frame hold, a paint, a roto, you know, and then go down this line, I know that I'm going to get this. But if you don't know exactly what they do, as time goes on, if you're asked to do something just a little bit different, it's not going to translate as well. And also, you're going to get work from other people that they've already worked on. And if you don't know what they did, it makes it a lot more difficult. I'm still learning that all the time, because everybody does everything differently. Some people, I want to stress this. If you decide to become a compositor, really try to keep your node tree clean, because I've seen people, I mean, I'm sure you can Google just like spidering out from every which way, and if you get a shot that you're like, hey, can you finish this for me? It's not going to be fun. So just try not to be that person. Yeah.
In your experience, when you were initially, I have my servant. In your experience, when you initially like applied for positions in different locations, were you ever worried that, you know, did you ever like tell them where you're based, or like worried that they would say that you're ineligible just because you don't live in like, say, a certain location?
When I first was applying, I was not, only because I applied everywhere and I was just out of school. And I think that they kind of understand that. But they were like, hey, can you be out in LA in 2 weeks? So you got to be willing to like make that jump. Now you will find, like, if you're looking for jobs on LinkedIn, if you know, I definitely suggest that. Make a good LinkedIn connection group, and follow all the studios that you can, because they do post jobs on there. A lot of them will say, need to already be based here, need to already be based there. After I got that first job, I only applied for jobs in LA. So that made it easier. So that's all I can really attest to. Like, if you moved to Atlanta and then started applying for jobs in LA, I would be honest. I would, you know. I mean, if they want you, they're going to want you. And if you say, hey, it's no problem, I can move there, then that should be fine. A lot of jobs will put, hey, no, we already want someone who's based in LA, or only LA applicants. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
time for maybe one more question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So going through a bunch of different studios like you have, are there any like do's and don'ts of studio and team etiquette that you find yourself having to tell out new people, or things that you think people might not be aware of as much as they should be?
Yeah. One of the big ones is that every studio has a different pipeline, meaning every studio has like a different save process. Every studio has a different way to open up their files. Every studio has their own servers, you know, that, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's going to be different every single time you go somewhere new. So just make sure that you're aware of that. And like I said, I think being honest about the things that you do and don't know, not necessarily saying, oh, I don't know how to do that, but saying, I haven't done a lot of that, but I am willing to learn and I'm a fast learner. Don'ts? Just, you know, be nice. You know, show up on time. Do what they ask you to do, especially when you're first starting out. So, yeah.
All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions, do you have any like maybe piece of parting wisdom you want to let
just
out?
What I've said before, just, you know, make sure to take chances, because you don't know like where it's going to lead. I mean, when I started here, like, you literally have no idea. Even in the industry, I have no idea. I can't plan 2-3 years in advance because I don't know. I want to move to New York someday, and I definitely think that that's a possibility, but I can't plan that. I have no idea. So just take chances when they're offered to you. Don't let a contract ending get you down, because you have no idea what's going to come next after that. Literally zero idea, and it could be the best thing that happened to you. After 2 years at Luma, I didn't think I wasn't ever going to find a job again, but I just wasn't sure about what was going to happen. I wasn't sure about going to a new studio. It was weird, you know, but it was literally the best thing that could have happened to me. So just, you know, take the chances, you know. So.
All right, well, thank you so much, Tiffany. Everybody, let's give her a round of applause. All right.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.